Welcome to this. Oh, recording off, sorry. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to these hustings, which have been organised by Friends of the Earth and Extinction Rebellion. My name is Andrew Kelly, and I'm hosting tonight's husting. Thank you very much for coming on. This is a husting very much to look at candidate views on climate, nature, and the environment generally. And we have had many questions submitted in advance of this meeting, which I have grouped together and will be asking the candidates for their views on, following their 2-minute contribution that we'll be asking them to make. I should just say, to begin with, that we're not expecting any alarms today, but if there are, you go through the door at the back, turn right, and then go through the gates, and there'll be staff on hand to help you with guidance to that. I've got 3 candidates with me tonight. To my immediate left, Andrew Brown from the Liberal Democrats, Lib Dems. To his left, Jay Breitenauer from the Green Party. And to my right, Neil Morton from the SDP. That's the Social Democratic Party. Yes. We have had responses from Karen Smith, who is not able to attend. I thought it would be helpful if I just read out her email, which said that they have been advised not to attend hustings. We have no further information from that, although Darren Jones also issued a statement which said something similar. The Reform candidate, Richard Visick, sent his apologies, but I don't think there was a formal response from the Conservative Party, from this friend of the Conservative Party. Notwithstanding that, we've got a terrific panel. I'm looking forward very much to asking them questions and discussing these critical issues. This event is free, but if you could contribute anything at the end, we'd be grateful. There's a questions post box in the hall at the end of the meeting. So I'm going to kick off by asking each of the candidates to speak for 2 minutes, and I've been told it's 2 minutes. And to set their case, I'm going to start with Andrew Brown. Andrew, would you kick off for us, please?
Thank you. So I'm Andrew Brown. I'm the Liberal Democrat candidate. I was in 2019 and I'm standing again in this vote today. Sorry, this is cutting in and out. It's cutting. Do you want to use that? I don't know if it's there. Sorry. Thank you. So I'm Andrew Brown. I'm the Lib Dem candidate. I'm in my day job. I'm a councillor in the south of the city in Hengrove and Whitchurch Park Ward. And I've lived in Bristol for 14 years and it's very much settled here. I'm standing for the Liberal Democrats who exist, this is from our constitution, we exist to build and safeguard a fair, free and open society in which we seek to balance the fundamental values of liberty, equality and community, in which no one shall be enslaved by poverty, ignorance, conformity. And I've always liked that, so it's a really good short summary of my political philosophy and what it means to be a Liberal Democrat, which is about maximising people's opportunity to achieve their full potential in life. But there's another part to preamble which I also really like, which is we believe that each generation is responsible for the fate of our planet, and by safeguarding the balance of nature and the environment, the long-term continuity of life in all its forms. And I think that gets to the core of the concern for the environment, tackling climate change, and making sure that we can pass on to our children and grandchildren an earth which is, which is fit for living in. So we've had our manifesto published, and it's been Greenpeace, Friends of the Earth, and other organisations have had a chance to look at that. And Greenpeace's take is that the Lib Dems set a high bar on climate and nature with a fair approach to transition that shields those struggling with the cost of living and recognises the UK's responsibility to support climate vulnerable countries around the world. And I'm proud that, to stand on the manifesto. Is it complete? Did it include more things? Yes. But fundamentally, the Liberal Democrats recognise the climate crisis that we're in and have measures to address it.
Thank you very much. Jay, yes, pass the microphone. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much for having me here. I'm Jade Brightner. I am the Green Party candidate for Bristol South. So I decided to stand for election for many reasons. One of those was my children, as well as wanting to improve the future for all children through the cessation of climate change. My children are disabled according to the social model. So in a world of climate stress, people with disabilities are going to be disproportionately negatively affected by climate change, as will other people from marginalised communities. So that's really important to me. I've also spent some time living in the global south, where the very real effects of climate change are already tangibly present. Last year, my cousin lost her home in a mudslide that was a result of an unseasonable storm. And 4 years ago, some friends of ours lost their home in a wildfire that was in the middle of winter. So when you're being personally affected by issues like that, it's very hard to kind of ignore the immediate response needed for climate. It's actually quite hard being part of the Green Party to talk about what the Green Party will do for climate, because the answer is everything. Everything we do is underpinned by the need to stop global warming and to improve the climate. So every single policy we have, and I think we're probably unique in that sense, every single policy we have is underpinned by a climate mission. There are obviously some specifics. It's really hard to pinpoint ones I want to talk about. But things like, for example, introducing a Rights of Nature Act, similar to the one they have in New Zealand, giving rights to nature itself, ending the sewage scandal, which just has to happen, sooner rather than later. Creating an English right to roam act to make sure that people have got access to the green countryside. Something that's pretty important to me. I actually I manage a foundation that seeks to improve access. So yeah, those are just some of the things.
Thank you very much. Neil, thank you.
Good evening, thank you for having me. My name is Neil Norton and I'm standing for the Social Democratic Party. We are a left-leaning but socially conservative party. I'm a resident of Hengrove and I've lived in Bristol for under a year now. If elected MP for Bristol South, I will support the Green Belt for allotments, market gardens and community orchards and community farms, prohibit private housing developments on Greenbelt land, protection of ancient woodland and veteran trees in rural and urban environments, so protecting our green spaces. I will look into scrapping the Bristol Clean Air Zone, and I will increase nuclear energy from 12% to 40% by 2035.
Thank you very much. I mean, there's a mixture there of the long-term future generations considerations, as well as the very hyper-local issues that some of the questions we've had submitted today, I will be asking our candidates about. But I wanted to start off with perhaps one of the biggest issues we face. We've often said that 2030 is a critical year. Climate has hardly been mentioned in this election, despite many efforts by many people. What can government do as against what individuals can do? We know we all try our best, but what can government do? What's the specific role of government if you're elected? Jay, can I start with you on that one?
I mean, I think too much focus has been put on the individual over the years, and actually it is government policy. It has to be a top-down situation. I think one of the things that's been disappointing for me in this election is with some of the bigger parties taking climate and putting it over here and having separate things to address climate over here, and then everything else is here. And as I said, the Green Party, we see climate as underpinning everything. You can't have climate justice without social justice and vice versa. So things like investing in green energy infrastructure, investing in public transport, investing in creating jobs and a regenerative economy, focusing on education, making sure that the nature of a climate positive future starts in the classroom, so that our young people understand the world that they're going into. I was actually at primary school yesterday and there was a big discussion about climate anxiety and the effect that that's having on young people. So certainly there's big issues that need to be addressed. They need to be led really clearly by government policy. I think we have to remove this focus. We've all got to do our bit, obviously. We have to remove this heavy focus on the individual, because at the end of the day, recycling our cans every week is not going to stop global warming. It's not going to improve things. It has to come through central government, and they have to make links with other governments internationally to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Thank you very much, Jane.
I think we need to look at fixing society first. We do need to get people to gain respect, basically, not throw rubbish around, respect wildlife, not use land for building. It all starts within society itself, and I feel the government needs to push more. You've got schools in Japan that tend to focus on respect, such as cleaning up after themselves, and I think why not we have it in this country instead of focusing on things that we don't really need? I also think as well, we need to start looking at the basics, looking at what actually matters to people, and looking at fixing what we can do local upwards when it comes to the climate crisis.
Okay, and Andrew.
I was difficult to disagree with much of what Jay said. I think the thing I would say is, so much of what happens in society depends upon the direction that government sets. But you've got to involve business, you've got to involve civic society, you've got to involve councils and individuals, and you've got to work internationally as well, which isn't to say we should leave it, because regardless of what we do, we won't have an impact, and the mission will keep going in China and India and Africa, etc. That's we need to push for international treaty action. We need to push for local action, British action, and we need to push for more action at local levels. But also there's soft power as well, and MPs have a role in bringing together the different parts of their communities to achieve more locally in constituencies, to work with councils, to work with organisations like this, like the one we're in just now, to make incremental change. And ultimately, and this is where I sort of differ a bit from Jay, is we can do top-down stuff, and there absolutely has to be top-down stuff, and there has to be incentives for change. But you have to take people with you on the journey as well, and you have to ensure that when we make the changes, A, nobody's left behind because they've lost the heavy industry or whatever, and B, that they understand why the changes are being made, they're skilled up for the new economy and making, the confidence in the world as it develops, rather than the world as it once was.
Let's talk about a specific example which came up in some of the questions we had, which is about housing and about the question is specifically for another Hustings area, but nonetheless it's a question which affects this city and which affects this country, which is about we're not building enough housing. Where do we build this housing, and what kind of housing do we build? Neil, start with that. What's the SDP's policy on housing?
The SDP's policy on housing is more council housing, less student development, less student housing, not building on green belts, and using more and more of brownfield sites. We feel that there is not enough council homes being built, and there's not enough affordable housing being built, because the definition of affordable just seems to be very broad. It's like people just haven't got the money. So we feel we should start bringing it back so that people can have their own home, and that homeless families can be dealt with.
Andrew, this is an issue which has affected the council quite heavily. You've just very handily found your manifesto commitments on housing there.
So, I mean, there's two things. I don't want to talk too much about things from a council perspective, because I've got a certain role within the council, which includes the development of the local plan. I've inherited that as part of my new role that I've just taken up in the council, and that's very much this area. So I'll speak a little bit more about national policy, but it addresses the key points. So the national policy is that we have got a housing crisis. And the national policy is to build 380,000 homes a year, and 150,000 of those to be social homes, because there is a key issue of affordability of people in accommodation. There's a rental crisis as well, and we need to address the rental sector. And you know, we've got rough sleeping, we've got a Vacancy Act that's been on the statute book since 18 whenever, and we need to address all these issues. And you know, there's various ways in which those can be addressed, but the key thing is we need to increase our housing stock, and there's no getting away from that. The balance has to be how do we do that? And it's a real challenge when you're looking at a city like Bristol, which has got very discrete boundaries and limited amount of land, and 28,000 on the waiting list. So, you know, the desire would be for brownfield first, but that's not to say that, you know, that there will be circumstances in which other options have to be looked at, because that's the reality of getting to where we need to be in terms of housing all the people that need to house.
So just to clarify, other options might include building on the green belt.
They might do that.
Jack?
So the Greens have been quite vocal and bold with their commitment to greener and fairer housing. So the upfront commitment in the Green Party manifesto is building 150,000 social homes a year, which I think the most we've had in the last couple of decades has been 30,000 a year. So it's quite a big commitment. For those to be of passive house or similar standards. So we're looking at not just building homes, making sure those homes are made in an environmentally sensitive way. To obviously introduce rent controls, to try and reclaim the rental sector, so that people, you know, ultimately people shouldn't be making money off of other people's need for secure housing. To make sure that any development that takes place also has investment in local infrastructure, because this is a problem. That's why it's not directly related to the need for housing for people to live in. It is actually directly related to the need for equity in homes. So making sure that people, when they've got their new passive house or similar standard home built in an environmentally sensitive way, also can access a GP and can get on a bus. And you know, have access to affordable food and things nearby. So it's about building systems. It's about looking at the systems and building systems that work for society. Obviously, as well, we have a commitment to looking at existing housing stock and how that can be repurposed, and also focusing on brownfield sites, and also looking at community-led housing developments, and how the community can take back control of housing, and as well as other similar things, which probably got any questions later, so I won't answer that.
So just on a specific Bristol South question we had was about Yew Tree Farm and green spaces. This will not come as a surprise, I don't think, to any of the candidates here. What's your views on this, and what's your solutions to this issue? Jay, I'll start with you.
Yeah, it's really difficult with Yew Tree Farm. I've been involved in the campaign to save Yew Tree Farm pretty much from its inception. I think Yew Tree Farm is the big thing about Yew Tree Farm is that it is such a important site for wildlife, and there is so much going on there in terms of wildlife conservation. It's a dormouse habitat. There's so many important, there's bats. It's incredible the wealth of wildlife we've got there in what is essentially an urban environment. And certainly for me, my kind of my personal kind of involvement in that campaign has been very much driven by those issues, by saving hedgerows, by making sure that we're actually considering wildlife when we're looking at development opportunities. Obviously, there are some other issues going on there as well, but for me, that's been where my involvement has been very much centred.
Andrew, from your point of view.
Yeah, sure. So coming back to the local plan, when I joined the local plan working group on the local council, it was around about the time that the council was reconsidering allocations that had previously been mooted. One of those was Beauty Farm, and at the time I joined the local plan working group, it was when it was taken out of consideration for development. So the that's my position as well. I don't think it's appropriate to develop in that area. Notwithstanding that there's a big development already next door and has been for decades, but I think Usually Farm needs to be protected. It's got the FNCI identification, designation, that's the word I was looking for. And so that's part of the local plan, and sort of support that going forward. So yeah, as things stand, it should be developed, and it's not in the local plan, and should be open to local future plan.
Neil, what your view on this?
I feel it should be left alone. The wildlife needs to be protected, conservation, it should not be developed and built on at all. Green spaces are vital towards people's mental health, people's well-being, and there's a lot that can be done there for the community as well.
Thank you. I want to broaden this now. One of the questions we had was about definitions of growth and whether we should be going for growth, and who inspires you when you think about issues of growth. I mean, so let's start with you, Neil, on, are we growing in the right way? Should we be going for economic growth?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry. Okay. Yes, we should be going for economic growth, as I feel that we're growing in the wrong way. We seem to be creating money out of things with the council, no disrespect to the councillor. It just feels like there's things that we don't need, basically, and I think we should be putting the money back into services, back into green spaces, getting more conservation, more community groups in our local areas, in our local parks, more into rubbish collection. I just feel as if we're heading backwards, and I feel that we're not putting our communities first, and that we need more local focus, more focus on bringing people to their right potential.
Andrew, what going for growth?
Yes, but qualified. I think there's a lot of talk about growth, and I think one of the things I've done in my personal life is sort of look to redress the way I live, so that it's less about materials and less about material growth. And I think there's a lot in society where people are chasing after money for money's sake, and we're not measuring or capturing other forms of well-being in society, and making sure that people are not only having enough to live on, but actually having enough to live on comfortably, and that they have a work-life balance that where they're not having to work multiple jobs in order to make ends meet, where they're able to find other things to value in life and have time to spend. So I think growth, yes, but it needs to be qualified. And as we start to talk about growth, we start to talk about profitability and productivity. And I think that needs to be hugely qualified and ask exactly what are we measuring here, and are people happy, and are people able to achieve what they want to achieve, not are they achieving something for the economy, or are they achieving something for the coffers of Westminster.
Jay?
So the Green Manifesto is not based on growth; it's based on fairness, and the funding, everything in the Green Manifesto has been fully costed, and it is based on the people with the broadest shoulders taking more weight. I think that we're in a position at the moment where this focus on growth means that the people at the kind of lower socioeconomic end of the spectrum are being increasingly squeezed in terms of time, in terms of finances, and they are unable to live safe and secure lives, let alone have choice. And that's just not fair. the Green Party would like to see wealth shared more fairly. And we would like to see the knock-on impacts of that in things like a 4-day week, for example, with no reduction in salary for people, so that people have got an extra day to do the things that are really important to them. It might be volunteering, it might be working on their allotment, it might be friends and family, but that's something that is part of our commitment. We also want to take the economy we have at the moment and make it a greener economy. So we'll be looking, for example, at investing in wind energy, so that we've got 70% of the UK's electricity accounted for by wind energy by 2030, and 100 gigawatts of solar by 2035. That investment would mean that energy prices would come down, and it would mean that more balance in the economy, and it would mean more money to invest in things like rail infrastructure, public transport, healthcare, the things that keep, society ticking along. So yeah, it's my news.
Just stay with you, because I want to ask you a follow-up question and then ask the other two panelists as well. It's linked to a question from Hilary Saunders in the audience, which is about getting to net zero.
Yeah.
And we all want to get to net zero, but the costs, the opportunities are good, but the costs can often fall on the wrong people, the ones who have least. And you've started the discussion there. How do we make sure that we do have a fair approach? I mean, there's lots of ideas out there. There's lots of old ideas which are coming back, like even universal basic income and so on. And it seems to me one of the new ideas is a 4-day week, which you mentioned. But how do we make sure that this is fair and it's not just as a small group of people will benefit?
So I think one of the really important things is bringing some of the core services back into public ownership, because at the moment the taxpayer is propping up private investment in things that are actually essential for people to live, like access to clean water and energy and public transport. So actually bringing those back into public ownership, so they're not based on profit, means that the people working in those sectors can be paid fairly. It means that those sectors can be run more efficiently, and we don't have to worry about giving the investor their 20%. Essentially, it would ultimately reduce the burden on the taxpayer. I think one of the things that's been talked about a lot with regards to the Green Party as well is the wealth tax, making sure that people who do earn significantly more than that average person are paying their fair share. Because at the moment, the way the tax system is set up, it isn't fair in terms of the tax burden. And also increasing taxation slightly for people earning more than £50,000, which would affect my family. My husband earns more than £50,000 when he's working full time. It's not at the moment for health reasons, but so it would affect us. I think most people would agree that paying a little bit extra in tax each month, if you are earning a significantly higher than average income, but knowing that you've got affordable public transport, knowing that your water bills are affordable, your energy bills are affordable, because those things are in public ownership, it actually frees money up in everybody's pocket. It doesn't cost us more.
Take to Andrew next, please.
Thank you. Yeah, so I tend to agree with a lot of that. I think there are two things to that. It's how we fund things, and that's really key. And the way that we've gone about the costings in our manifesto in funding things is looking at who has benefited out of the cost of living crisis, and it's the banks and it's the oil and gas companies, and and we're proposing windfall taxes on those or increased banking levies in order to ensure that that money is available to spend on addressing the needs of the country elsewhere. And I think the other thing on this is who do you support in moving to net zero. We've had a lot of projects in the past where people have had subsidies for solar panels or subsidies for electric vehicles, but it's been, generally speaking, you've had to be able to afford these things in the first place in order to get subsidy. And so I think we need to be looking at how we get houses renovated so that people can benefit from lower bills, and we can start to address net zero, and we can start to improve the housing stock for the future. Those sorts of things involving people in citizens' assemblies to take them along with the decision-making process and get them involved with that. But yeah, really incentivizing people and getting support to low people on low incomes in order to ensure that they can benefit from, you know, solar panels or insulation or heat pumps or whatever it happens to be.
Thank you. But how do we make this a fair transition?
We make this a fair transition by nationalising all energy. So basically, the SDP is proposing a British Energy, where we'll be responsible for implementing a brand new strategy. We would look at cutting down the cost of net zero because we feel it's going to be costly to ordinary people, and that potentially this could cost up to 15% of our national GDP by 2050. We do feel those who actually are earning a lot should pay more, and that's one thing we do actually support. We feel that people should be able to should be supported with their income, for example, such as a better living standards, better wages, more help and support for those in work, actually make work pay. And we also feel as well that fossil fuel dependence does need to be reduced. Even though we are doing quite a fair bit in this country, I feel we do need to reduce it a bit more and look at alternative energies such as nuclear energy, and look at other things such as tidal energy.
Stay with you because
Sorry.
it links. No, it's fine. It links to a question about democracy, and I wanted to ask about the panel's views on how we make democracy better. You, in your manifesto, have quite a lot of points on this. I suspect we're going to have broad agreement actually on this question, but let's see anyway. What would you do to make sure that people can engage more, and that they feel they have a stake in the democracy, which is going to be making these huge, big changes that are needed?
We feel at the SDP that the electoral system is unfit for purpose, so we do support PR. So we feel that every vote should count. Everybody from any party should have the chance to be represented in the Parliament. We also feel as well that MPs should be, and councillors should be focusing on their constituents. And I think the right to be recalled, the right to transparency, and the right for people to actually have more say in their communities is needed.
Andrew, I mean, you're not going to argue against electoral reform, don't you?
How did you guess? Yeah, so we need fundamental electoral reform of the Commons, council representation, votes at 16, abolishing the Lords. But those in themselves are not necessarily panaceas for engagement. And I think you know, we need to all probably as politicians recognise where people are disengaged and find new ways of engaging them. And that's not easy, as I'm sure you know, we've all knocked on doors, but we know that people have a million and one other concerns. But I think that's something that's beholden on us to do. The other thing I would mention, we just mentioned citizen assemblies, something that we are proposing around net zero and climate change. You know, they have a role to play, I think, in engaging people, and it's a way for people to learn, do a much deeper dive on issues, and learn more, and engage more, and help set the agenda. But yeah, there's certainly a lot to be done in terms of engaging people. It's not just done. Yeah.
Jane, on you, what often comes up these days is lack of trust in politicians and politics. What do you propose on them?
Yeah, it's a really tricky question. I mean, when you've had a government like the one we've just had, I mean, for 14 years, but particularly in the last 5, it's really hard to persuade people that, you know, that people going into politics are not just in it for themselves. Because what we've seen is a lot of people who are just in it for themselves. I think that, speaking to Andrew's point on engagement, I think that increased engagement would also help with trust, although the two things have to go hand in hand. I do think a lot of people, especially young people, don't necessarily understand politics and the way things work. And I think that a lot of assumptions are made about politics and politicians and the way that government, local and national, works, without necessarily fact checking, without necessarily speaking to people. So, I mean, I personally think that more politicians should be getting out and about into the community. I'd like to see MPs doing more kind of grassroots level work in their communities. It's obviously very important to represent people in Westminster, but actually being visible in your community, being available, is something that's really important. And just in, helping educate people, particularly younger people, on how politics works, and educating people on how they can get involved. Because at the end of the day, democracy isn't just about voting. We want everyone to vote. We want to increase turnout. But there's many, many other ways that people can get involved in the democratic process, and we need to share that.
And that links to a question we've also had tonight from MJ Thornton, I think it is, about communication, how we communicate better. Just quick views from each of the panelists on how we can communicate issues of climate change better and the need for change and what we do. Jane, you start with you.
So I'll just kind of call back to the answers from the other two regarding proportional representation, which obviously the Green Party supports. I do think a proportional representation system would actually improve communication. So I think at the moment, with this first past the post system and this need for so much money and investment in political parties in order for them to get elected, there is too much playing into the hands of big business and agendas that don't necessarily meet the needs of the average person. There is perhaps not enough honesty around the messages that need to be communicated. So I think electoral reform would actually help with communication, because it would actually free politicians up to be a little bit more honest and to not have to rely on third parties with conflicting interests. Certainly with, just quickly, with direct information about climate change, I do think we need to be more honest with people about what the impact of climate change is going to be. There's a lot of discussion, there's been a lot of discussion, particularly in the last couple of years, led by the current government, around not impacting people's lives, about people, what the cost of net zero is going to be to the average person. We need to start talking about what the cost of not meeting net zero is going to be, and being very honest with people about what that future looks like. But we also have to be careful with that because of this issue of eco-anxiety. We also don't want people to completely switch off and panic. So there does need to be a balance there, but we definitely need more honesty around what climate change actually means for us, not in 100 years, but in the next 10 years.
And Andrew, as a councillor, you're often at the front line of some of these things locally. What communications could be done better, do you think? You're entering a whole new committee system, for example, on the council.
Yeah, so I'll just pick up on what Jay said and I'll answer that. So I agree we need to be honest with people about where we're at and the consequences of not doing anything, but we also need to be finding positive messages and positive reasons for people to make changes where where it can get some more skills or save some money or whatever. We need to be very careful that we don't make people think, throw their hands up and say, well, that's not going to be done. Anyway, so more generally communication, I think, we have just moved to committee system in Bristol, and one part of that is to try and encourage more engagement with decision making, to make the decision making more transparent. So again, I think transparency in politics is something that's absolutely key. People feel, can see how the decisions are being made and know that you have influence in those. That's key. There is maybe something around how we use different media outlets to communicate. I remember when sort of Twitter was the future and, it was seen as, a great way of communicating, and it's turned into something that is not a great way of communicating. But, we need to find people where they are in a lot of, and find ways to communicate with people where they are rather than, waiting for them to come to us.
And Neil, just on one of the interesting things about your manifesto, was about the potential of an English Parliament. And if you read Caroline Lucas's new book, she talks about that in there as well. So I think there's this view that England is effectively underrepresented in the democratic structure that we have. How would that help on these issues?
I think with a more federalised England Parliament, for example, South West, West Midlands, South East, obviously done with proportional representation so that it actually brings that communication and actually brings MP and constituent closer, it would give more power to the regions and give more benefit to those regions, because parts of the South West are deprived. There's parts of Bristol that are deprived, and it just feels as if there's lots of forgotten areas, and having that regional parliament and having that regional assembly will give that link, and it's something that's actually needed, because people need a voice. There are people out there in parts of Bristol, in parts of Western-super-Mare, Devon, who haven't got that, and they've been left behind. They've been ignored by Westminster, they've been ignored by the mainstream parties. I do feel as well that regarding the issues of communication with climate change, I do think there is too much fear-mongering from both sides of the argument. And I feel as if people are between a rock and a hard place. They just literally unsure who to believe and what to believe sort of thing. It's just like put people in a bit of a what do I do sort of situation. The SDP does actually want schools to focus on British wildlife and actually encourage practical conservation projects from primary school all the way up to secondary school. And we're also looking in as well as a natural history GCSE, which focuses on British national history and on our wildlife and of the history of wildlife.
Thank you. Andrew, coming to you first on the next series of questions, which is obviously something in the news quite a bit now, which is about sewage and water and disgraceful way water has been managed water. What do we need to do about this? I mean, your leader took one for the team really on this by falling in the water. Yeah, it's okay by the way.
As far as I'm aware, yeah. Yeah, so sewage I think it's become, I know we've done a lot of campaigning around it, and I think it's become a totem for more general sort of environmental concerns in the way we're treating nature. Specifically on sewage, our proposals are to make the water companies public benefit companies, so they're to change their structure so they're not geared up to benefit shareholders, to cap or ban the directors from having bonuses until sewage discharges have been sorted out, and to make sure that they actually invest in the infrastructure. We've had 20 years or whatever it is of a lack of investment in new reservoirs for and we've not fundamentally redesigned our drainage system since the 1800s, and we're not making the progress that we need to make in order to prevent pollution in our rivers and our natural waterways. So we need, it is a great deal of intervention, and to start to get back to a position where we're not putting effort into our waterways and polluting the natural environment.
Jane, just please, what's the Green Party position?
So I think the problem with water sewage is another one of those issues that falls into that bracket of everything is connected. So it is not, we can't tackle the issue of polluted waterways as a standalone issue. It has to be tackled with across a whole suite of different interventions that's going to improve things more generally. Obviously the key thing is to bring the water companies back into public ownership, something I think we agree on here, but the idea that shareholders are getting dividends for companies that are, when companies are also being fined for pumping sewage into our waterways is unbelievable, and that absolutely has to end. The Green Party would also look to set aside 30% of our land and our domestic sea or domestic waters by 2030 for additional protection. We also want to look at changing food systems. So at the moment, we've got poor diets costing the NHS £6.5 billion a year. And we've got food production accounting for a third of all emissions. And a lot of those emissions are going directly into our waterways. So we'd be looking at supporting farmers to move to more greener, nature-friendly types of farming, to completely stop using pesticides that damage the natural environment, including the bee population. And those things will also help with that secondary pollution of waterways. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about the water companies, it is also about these kind of secondary polluting issues that are related to the systems that we currently rely on.
I want to come back to bees in a moment, but would you nationalise the water companies?
Yes, the SDG policy is to nationalise water companies and nationalise all forms of energy. So this is including electric as well. So we're all on the same page regarding this. We would look at stricter legislation to stop pollution. So basically investigations into this, stop the polluters, stop the use of antibiotic use in regards to fish and other wildlife, look at limits and look at protection and better monitoring, especially in protected areas and protected wildlife.
And just staying with you,
Yeah.
there was a specific question about the use of pesticides against bee populations, where there has been, they shouldn't be used, but they have been used.
We would not allow it. We would have stricter legislation.
And Jay's already said that, so I don't need your view, but Andrew?
I'm tempted to crack a joke here, but I better not. But I'll make a serious point about bee pesticide use. And the technical word which I can never say even when it's written in front of me. And that is they were banned in the EU, and we've left the EU, and we reneged on that. And then and I think that's one of the values of working together as with our European neighbours and the European Union, where we were able to take cross-border initiatives to improve the environment on a continental level, that we are now less able to do it over, but we've not got that level of cooperation happening in the way that.
And just staying with you, Andrew, there was a specific question about fox hunting I wanted to ask. There are some loopholes in the current fox hunting bill. Would you ban trail hunting as Labour is proposing?
So that's my view, yes. That's my personal.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in the Green Party manifesto that we would ban blood sports and bin trail hunting, and also start banning badger culling as well.
Oh, sorry, yes. Can I ask you before we go back to Neil?
Yeah.
Badger culling?
And badger culling.
Are you friendly to animals?
Yes. Yes, we would actually ban fox hunting. We would also ban trail hunting, and we would also look at stricter legislation to prevent any loopholes from happening, because it's absolutely cruel.
Okay. Coming to the end of the hour, there's a number of questions which we haven't covered yet, but I just want to quickly go through some of these if I can. But they're all really big questions, but on food particularly, and food's been mentioned quite a bit tonight. Food security is one issue, and making sure that we grow enough of our own food to help solve some of those problems, but also the cost of living crisis when it comes to food. I think certainly whenever I go to the supermarket and buy a fairly basic basket of stuff, I'm absolutely shocked by the price of it. And but pair of food, Andrew.
I'm all for it.
yeah. That's the how.
Yeah, I mean it is a challenge. we've gone through this period of not quite hyperinflation, but high inflation. And whilst that's come down again, as the Prime Minister schemes to point out, everybody's base level standard of living has been rebased, and we can all see it in our weekly food shops. And I think we need to get to a position where people's incomes are will support the higher level of food costs that we've got, but also we need to invest in our own farming infrastructure and food manufacturing infrastructure, to ensure that we're not held hostage, so to speak, to the dangers of international exchange rates, of international markets, or changes in climate elsewhere impacting on our own on ability to feed our population. So there's a longer term piece of work on that as well.
Jane, food?
Yeah, again, it's a systemic issue, so it's not just about the specifics around food. There are broader issues that need to be tackled as part of the dealing with the problem. So as I said before, poor diets cost the NHS £6.5 billion a year. Some maybe faster ways or kind of initial ways of tackling that would be things for the Green Party, would be things like universal free school meals of a particular nutritional standard, plus free breakfast clubs for the under sixes. I said before about financial support for farmers to move to nature-friendly farming, an end to factory farming, and a focus on improving our food security by encouraging farming that is climate and nature appropriate, and also creating yields that means that we can feed ourselves in this country in an affordable way. Other things, one of the things that people often say is, oh, it's free to grow your own food, or it's cheap to grow your own food, but actually that takes time and mental energy and physical energy, and not everybody can do that. We are proposing to increase the minimum wage to £15 an hour, and as I said before, looking at introducing a 4-day week, which would give people more time and more money to do things like grow their own food. If that's something they wanted to do, there also has to be a level of choice in that. I wouldn't want to see anybody giving up spending time with friends and family, or giving up hobbies because they felt they needed to grow their own food because they couldn't afford to buy it from shops. We'd also be looking at introducing food-based education in schools at a young age, so making sure that preparing food, growing food, cooking healthy nutritional food is part of the curriculum, and that becomes part of the £8 billion investment in schools that we'd be looking to provide to kind of improve this education system that we've got at the moment.
Thanks. Food policy?
The SDP food policy is looking at free school meals at all state schools at all ages, from primary to secondary school in term time. We will look at substitutes introduced at sufficient level to produce food sustainability, and will target the most intensive and polluting sectors. We will put Buy British First and give more support for British farmers by not having trade deals that disadvantage British farmers. We will look into farmer-led research and innovation approach to technology, making high yield farming less environmentally damaging and small-scale farming more efficient. We would look at also making work pay well for an better minimum wage, more taxes for the high earners, and making life affordable.
Staying with you for my final question before I do a round of question, which is about climate refugees and migration, because we are entering a period where this is likely to increase. What's the SDP policy on that?
We would look at cutting immigration to 50,000 a year. We don't mind people. Our immigration policy will be skills based, so literally wherever people want to come to work or they want to better their lives and education, that would be fine. We would take in refugees, but only genuine refugees, and it would be those that literally would be put into society, but made to settle in before they can actually obtain full status.
Andrew?
Well, I think we found a point of disagreement. You know, climate change is with us, and it will, result in increasing number of climate refugees, and asylum seekers. And we need to be able to address that. And we need to address that by where people are, seeking asylum, treating them fairly, giving them the ability to work out their claims are being processed, and giving them the dignity that they've not been afforded in their home countries. We need to look at increasing international aid so that we can help address the issues that will cause resettlement and climate route. You know, people moving as a result of climate change elsewhere. So, but yeah, the Liberal Democrats are an internationalist party, fundamentally committed to a world there where you know, people are free to live their lives and where they're treated with dignity and respect. And if, you know, if we've got asylum seekers coming here, desperate for a better life, we can find that.
I think one of the things that's really important to remember when we're talking about migration, particularly when we're talking about refugees and asylum seekers, is it could so easily be any of us in this room. And I think that the UN statistic is that at the moment there are 20 million climate refugees, people that have had to leave their homes or the traditional place that they live because it's no longer viable to live there. And we're looking at 200 million climate refugees by 2050. And that's not necessarily, I think it's very easy for us sitting here in you know, the global north to think of those refugees as being from people in challenging environments in the global south, but actually it could be people in the UK, it could be people from the Sunset Levels, you know, that it is a real thing that's going to affect all of us in a tangible way at some point. The Green Party would like to welcome migrants of any status because all migrants come with skills. Every single person that's had to leave their home to live elsewhere has had to do it for a reason. People don't just up and leave because they fancy a change, particularly if it involves a terrifying boat ride across dangerous waters. I've worked with refugees and asylum seekers. I've worked with incredibly talented doctors, engineers, other professionals who haven't been able to do that work in this country because the law doesn't allow them to. And actually, it would be great if we could actually change the system so that people who do come here because it's necessary can contribute in a way that is not just valuable to society, but is also valuable and meaningful to them as individuals. The other thing that's in our manifesto is looking at a financial contribution to the global south of 1.5% of gross national income to help mitigate for the climate damage that the global north is doing. And to work on establishing a loss and damage fund so that the people who are disproportionately affected by climate change through no fault of their own, or certainly through a less percentage contribution than other parts of the world, can have the lives that they deserve to have that have been taken away from them, you know, through what's happening elsewhere.
So we're at the end of our time. I've got one final question, which is, it's July the 5th. Your party has just won the election. They come to you and they say, what's the one piece of action we should take first on climate? And I'm sorry, Jay, you've got the mic, so you're going first, which is a bit unfair of me, but dream a bit.
It's hard, isn't it? Because there's so many
Yeah.
things, there's so many things
As we know
that need to
from
happen. Yeah, they need to happen immediately. I think that really the major standout issue that is affecting people in the UK and locally in Bristol at the moment that's directly related to climate and business is this issue of sewage. And I think that is the thing that it's actually not that hard to solve in the grand scheme of things. It's something that needs to be done quickly. And I think that is that would be an important win for whichever party takes the helm on the 5th of July to action that as quickly as they can.
Well, I should have said that, shouldn't I? I will say, getting rid of the restrictions that, and the constraints that are on planning for development of solar farms and wind farms, in getting moving with onshore wind again.
My first priority if elected for the SDP would be nationalising all energy and nationalising all water. We need to bring it back into the public control. We pay enough.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much. We've covered virtually all the questions we were sent, which is good. There's obviously lots more to talk about. I think it also shows the huge challenges we face as a society, each of us, to try and move things forward in the ways we need to do. Thank you very much. Thank you, Neil.
Thank
you. And Jay. And can I just say a general thank you as well for you standing, because I think we do face a crisis in democracy. And I think the more people who stand up and argue in good ways, and we come to some views about what we need to do, is really important. So thank you very much. Thank you all for coming, and please join me in thanking our guests tonight. Thank you.